Welcome to A Moment with Modern Mentors. Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm the author of Breaking the Gender Code, a new book that looks at the hidden codes that are holding women back and how to help rewrite them. And I'm here today with Caitlin, and we're talking about why the myth of having it all is actually stopping us from having what we truly want in life.
Hi Danielle, I'm so excited to be talking to you today, and thank you for joining us on A Moment with Modern Mentors. As a working mum myself, I can certainly relate to the myth of having it all and trying to juggle everything to achieve a so-called balanced life. Perhaps to begin with, can you just give us a bit of a summary of what led you to writing the book?
That's a great question, and I could talk a lot about this, like where to start, if we start. But it all really started when I was in Seattle. I was on a 3-day coaching intensive with my own coach Pam, and I was looking at ways to ramp up my business. So I was a wellness coach and executive coach at the time, specializing in well-being, and I could see that a lot of my clients were really struggling with juggling everything and work-life balance, and it was leading to exhaustion and depletion. So I brought that into the discussion, and there with Pam, and I just didn't know where to head. I was kind of stuck, and she said, you've got to get to know the people you want to work with and support better. So what's going on for them? What are their biggest challenges, and how can you help them? And those 3 questions just blew up everything. It was like, that's when I started thinking, right, I have to start speaking to these people and really understand their perspective. And so I started a research project. It was called The Wonders of Women Leaders. And it was really just a market research project to understand them all, their perspective. So, and I specialized in women who lead at work and who lead at home as lead parents. And I wanted to see what was working well across both, rather than, what are all the differences and how it's really hard. Trying to understand what's working well in all things that they do. So I went back into my corporate back in time, because I was spent 13 years building a career there. I was a CPA, and I worked for multinationals all across the world in all sorts of different roles. And so I went back in there and I started interviewing women who seemed to be successful and be doing both, well. And it was incredible what I found out. Like, so many of them were leading lonely. So they leading at the top, feeling like they had to do it all, be everything, and and looking after everyone else and not themselves. Then I also found that I found out a few things about parenting, some really interesting things about how being a leader at work can be very consistent with being a leader at home, because every single one of them except one said after they became a parent, they became a better leader, and it positively impacted everyone they led. So I was really interested to find out more about that, because we often get this perception that women who are working with children are more of a liability than an asset. And then also what kept coming up were all these stories around gender disparity and, poor treatment of women in the workplace and the unequal distribution of unpaid work. So what actually started as a research project became a mission, because I wanted to try and help women kick that, get rid of the juggle and the struggle and, work-life balance and all of those myths that we've been buying into. And what I found along the way was that there was this thing called the gender code that was impacting all of us. And it was holding all of us back. But the problem is it's so ingrained in our culture that we don't actually realize that it's causing all these performance pressures, like, barriers to, around things around perfection and emotional labor and emotional load, caring pressure, time pressure, having it all pressure. So that code is actually creating all of these pressures. And so I thought, this is just too good to keep to myself as a research project. I've got to share it more broadly. And that's when I thought, okay, the best thing to do probably is to write a book about it. So I created an avatar, Rebecca Fletcher. She looks a bit like you, actually.
Oh, really?
I just got her picture out of a magazine, and I looked at her whole life and who she was, and anytime that I was, struggling or wanted to give up, I said, no, Rebecca needs this book. You've got to keep going, Danielle. Rebecca needs this book. I needed this book 5 years ago. So that's how I came to it. There's a lot that happened within that, but that's how it all started.
So what is the gender code?
Okay, so I have called it a code just so it's easy to sort of understand, but it's that set of beliefs that we all recognize about the natural differences between men and women. And these beliefs create stereotypes that firmly keep the different genders in different boxes. And specifically, it keeps women from pursuing our dreams and goals in life, because women are typically pigeonholed as a carer and men as the provider. And a lot of that comes from the hunter-gatherer kind of, myth that we've been led to believe. But the thing is that even though we know, intellectually that it's not right, the code is so strong around that it's actually been embedded into our culture for millennia that it's really hard to let go of, even though we know that it creates difficulties for us personally, in our relationships, in business, and in our communities. So we see it all the time, and we see it, most, I guess, strongly in the home when a woman decides, woman starts to have a family, and with the unequal distribution of unpaid labour around the house. So that's when the code really comes into place, and all of the, pressures and, stereotypes that we've been buying into our whole lives.
Why do you think women believe that we can have it all, or want to have it all, or, where does that come from?
That question, because I talk about that in my book. That's where we are now. That's the kind of language that we use, and an aspiration of having it all. It's in the popular narrative. But what I would like to help people understand and open up is it really having it all, and what does having it all mean? So is having it all our own definition, or is it something that society has determined? Because if you look at what having it all is, the traditional, the popular kind of view is working and having a family. And so when you think about it, you dial it right down. Why is wanting to have a family and wanting to work having it all? Like, why is that something that comes with some pressure? When in both realms, you're just wanting to contribute your best and be who you are in both realms, and have an important contribution to your family or society or your workplace. And so the one in the workplace we get paid for, but we don't get paid at home. And the interesting thing is we never really talk about men having it all. Like, why is it women having it all, as if aspiring to want to work and contribute and have a family is something that is, highly aspirational. It's, I guess I really would like to help people understand, like, why do we actually talk about it having it all? Why isn't it just I'm working, some of it I get paid for, some of it I don't?
So do you think it's the mindset, rather than thinking that we're having it all, just thinking, well, this is what I do, like, and no excuses kind of thing?
Absolutely. This is just what I do. And where I feel that a lot of the pressure comes from is gender code, those, cultural beliefs that the woman is supposed to be the carer and the nurturer, and it's primarily her role.
Yeah.
And then the man is primarily the provider and the breadwinner, and that's his role.
Yeah.
And if we look at the way we're all brought up, the gendered, training that we all receive, it starts from early childhood, like the play behaviours of boys and girls. And it starts even before that with the way babies are handled.
Yeah.
So there's been studies that universities have conducted where they'll have babies that are dressed, female babies dressed as boys. The way people treat them are much different to when they're dressed as girls.
Yeah.
Just that yeah. And then all the way through, you look at childhood play behaviour. With boys, a lot of their games, this is totally, gender essentialist, and it's not all boys, but typically their games, there's a winner, there's a loser, there's hierarchy. There's a lot of winning and losing. So you can, you'd learn to drop the loss and look to the next win. So you're always looking to the next win.
Yeah.
You pick the person on your team who's the biggest, roughest, or the person who's going to help you win, not the one with the best social skills. So boys are sort of trained to drop the loss, move to the next win. They know where they are in the hierarchy. There's always outcomes. They move to the next thing. And then, so if you take that into the workplace, that's exactly, they've been trained for that system their whole lives.
So is part of the strategies that you're putting in place not only how women deal with it, but also how they raise their children? Is that sort of what you look at? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have 3 boys myself. I have a 9-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And their dad lives in China with his wife and their daughter. So it's me, solo.
Yeah.
And, we talk, we have a really healthy working relationship with the kids. But it's kind of me. I'm in charge. So sometimes I get a little bit, I don't know, drill sergeant or whatever about the way they're interacting with each other, because they follow that, typical male gendered way of operating, which is fine, absolutely fine. And but what I try to do is keep bringing in empathy and connection and understanding of, how they're all communicating together and what kind of brother they want to be with each other.
Yeah.
And try not to bring in any shame or anything like, or judgment, but helping them to see. So, cultivating that, awareness, self-awareness, observation, self-knowledge data bank. So I'm not, because I don't want to, make them think that they're wrong, but just to help open them up. Because the gendered female way of operating, childhood play behaviour is more around relational and process. So if you look at the games that girls traditionally play, competition can sometimes be seen as a relationship breakdown. So you take that into the workplace, and you've been trained for a different way of operating, then you're not trained as much for that environment.
We need to build that up in women, and probably building up that resilience of losing as well in girls.
Absolutely.
Which I know they certainly seem to focus a lot on in schools. Resilience building, which I'm sure we can all learn a lot from, really, can't we?
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we do every day. So it's actually being mindful of it and paying attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it, and being, I guess, parents who are helping that, helping bringing that to their attention, not necessarily teaching them stuff all the time, but bringing to attention how they are already operating now, all their gifts and strengths, and how they can bring that to resilience, how they can bring that to communication, how they can bring that to learning in the classroom.
In your in the work that you do, what other strategies do you suggest to women who particularly are feeling like they're wanting to expand their wings a bit and are finding it, difficult to balance it all, or to have it all? Like, what's the what helps?
What helps? I would say what actually helps is to work out what's most important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is, it might be your family, it might be work, and it's easy to understand those sort of things. But understanding actually what's that deeper core part of you. So what's the most important thing to you?
Mm-hmm.
So when I work with clients, we talk about this, and some clients it might be growth, personal growth. That's one that comes up quite a lot, actually,
Mm-hmm.
personal growth. So if growth is really important to you, and it's one of your top values, so looking at all your values and what is most important right at the core of who you are, then when you make decisions based on that important thing, so just say it is growth, then every decision you make is the right one because that's the most important thing to you. So just say you are you're in a job where so just what you're doing, Caitlin. So what you're doing in your job, let's just say it is growth, because I don't know, I haven't asked you, but just say it is growth.
Yeah.
So if you throughout your day and at the end of the day you feel like you've contributed and that you've helped people and that you've personally grown or developed in some way at the end of the day, then you're doing the right thing. You're doing the best thing for you and your family.
Yeah.
Because you're contributing to everyone that you work with and your family. And then just say you are looking for opportunities for your children to join clubs, to build their strengths, to have opportunities and experiences. And if it's growth that's important to you, then you're doing those things that are reinforcing your value of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding what's really important, what's the most important thing to you, and using that as a compass, then that helps to just, shut out the noise of those messages that are coming in, those societal messages and those cultural beliefs and that gender code that might be talking really loudly. If you are coming from that important place, using those things that are most important to you as a compass, then you're making all the right decisions.
So do you think it's as simple as women giving themselves permission to make these decisions of what they value and striving for it?
Absolutely. And that's I love that you've said it like that, because that is it in a nutshell. So that is the simple sort of summary.
Yeah.
The challenging part is the how. So how do we do it? How do we do it? So what I found in my work that is really important to do is to go through that process of understanding that we need to give ourselves permission, and then we want to do it. So there's two elements to it, and it's not kind of as easy as giving myself permission. And what I found a lot with women is when we tap into something beyond ourselves, so a higher purpose. So that could be our kids, it could be serving the community, it could be something, that higher mission. When we can tap into that and use that as a need and a want, then we're likely to be more successful. But if we just think we're doing it for ourselves, honestly, the majority of the time it's not sustainable. And I know that. Yeah, so when I was a personal trainer, I was noticing that the people who stuck with it with me and had that continual momentum were people who were doing it for either health reasons, they really had to make a difference, or it was for their family because they knew that they were going to be a better mum, they knew that they were going to be a better wife, that their mood was better. And then the results were that they had a lot more energy, they had a lot more sense of fulfillment and momentum and focus. So tapping into that is really important to make these changes, to be able to give ourselves permission.
When we're giving ourselves permission, I mean, it's a one step to be able to say, this is what I want to do. But obviously in your life, you have to get everyone else on board. How do you get your partner on board and your kids to, respect the choices that you're making when they may not feel that it's the best for them, even though ultimately it probably is?
That is such a great question, and I've got loads of responses to that, and I talk about that in the book. It's easy to just say it, okay, but it takes time to actually work at it. So with my boys, with my kids, I could see what was happening and how the gender stereotypes were at play. And so I decided to slowly bring them in and slowly upskill them. Okay. So I basically thought, actually, I didn't get any real training in this, like everything that I do. I've developed it over years and years of having to do it. They can do it too. So I basically say start with capable. So start with the belief that everyone in your house is capable of doing what you do. They are way behind in terms of years, and they haven't had, if they're male, they haven't necessarily had the gender, societal messages you have around expectations. But we're all actually individually different. All men are not naturally better at caregiving, at providing. All women are not naturally suited as carers. It's something that we're trained to do. It's encultured. It's not innate. So starting with that mindset, okay, everyone in this house is capable of doing doing what I do. But then that element of that is hard. What I find with a lot of people, and I've found too, it's hard to let go of that. That years of training. So that's where the self-compassion comes into. And it's just things like, okay, my way is not the only way, and it may not be the best way, but it's the way I know, and it's the way that I've been doing it for a long time, and that's okay. So it's okay for me to feel this like this. So it doesn't mean that others can't do it too. And I'll have some compassion for them because they haven't had the same training that I've had or the messages. So starting just with that mindset around everyone is capable, start with capable. Because if we look at men, like they can run ships, they can organise all sorts of logistical challenges. They just bring their strengths, their individual strengths to those challenges. Yeah. So, I mean, I starting with capable, I think is one that you can apply to everyone in the household. And then also what I found too is, the first step to gender equality is true partnerships. So true partnerships, and that you may not be partnered, but true partnerships with people who really want to see you flourish, really want to see you succeed. So that could be, other people, like, other families, friends, people in your community. Just saying you do have a partner at home. I've actually got like a process in the book around this, around building true partnerships. And essential, the first step is communication. Like communication, understanding each other's values, and even if they're not 100% aligned, at least respecting each other's values. And then looking at where you want to head together, like a family mission, understanding that there's going to be differences along the way. So, one time, someone's career might be more important and the other person takes a support role. Yeah. And then there's another transition phase and someone, having children, but all those different transition phases and committing to do them together because you're working towards this family mission, whatever that looks like for you. So I think the mindset shift is start with capable. Everyone in this house is capable. And then having, great communication, open communication, difficult conversations sometimes, a lot of the time at first, and being clear, consistent, and not making assumptions. So asking questions rather than making assumptions. Oh, I assumed you'd take the washing off the line because it was just about to rain. But actually, how often does that happen? So being clear about, asking questions. Can you get it off the line? Or I thought you would have checked all those errors, check for errors in that report before you submitted it. But can you check those errors before you submit? So asking rather than assuming, and it will change your life if you do that.
Do you think also lowering expectations of, particularly like, I'm thinking, women who like things done a certain way and around the house, or, and their partner may not do it the same way, may not do it
Mhm.
as well in their eyes. You know, do you think we need to
Yeah.
kind of lower our expectations and realize that, you know, it can be done differently and maybe doesn't have to be done perfectly all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a practical step. And once again, like you've nailed it again, it sounds so simple.
Mm.
The thing is with what I do in a lot of my work is I always try and understand how did we get here with that?
Mm.
And it is, a lot of it is to do with the training. And that's where that self-compassion piece comes in again.
Mm.
It's and lowering it. So and also talking about language, because for some people, lowering expectations sounds like they're dropping a ball. So instead of saying lowering expectations, that's where that self-compassion piece comes in. It's like, okay, what do I want to move away, and goals as well. What do I want to move away from, and what do I want to move towards? So I guess for me, I found, and experimenting with all this work that with the research, was like, I want to move away from being Dobby, that's house slave. I don't want to be the house slave. Okay, that's what I want to move away from. I want to be able to create opportunities to do other things with my time.
Yep.
And also, I don't want to use that mental energy with it. So I want to move away from that. And I want to move towards other opportunities. So things that I can do in my work, things that I can do in my personal life, things that I can, create space for.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have a decent motivator to change, and we can call it lowering expectations if you want, but also, or we can look at it as creating opportunities and not being the house slave, not taking on and because the last thing I ever want to do with all of my work is give women another thing to do on the to-do list, or make it about them, or that it's our fault that where we're at. It's not. It's training, it's messages, and it's how much we've bought into the gender code and created our own pressures. But we are in control of it. We can change it. But a lot of it is mindset.
Yeah.
So rather than lowering expectations, looking at what I want to move away from and what I want to move towards.
One of the pieces that the phrases that really struck me in the book, I haven't quite got through it yet, but the bit that I've read was, you're the person that does all the work, blah, blah. You're standing there, and even if you're not the one that always feeds the dog comes and sits in front of you, and that just, like, that's so my life. Like, I don't have a dog, but I have 3 children, and even though my husband is a very capable, very present parent, they still come to me. How do you change that? Or even it out?
Excellent. So I guess my first question would be, do you want it to change?
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah. Maybe I like that. This is becoming therapy.
It's a really, really interesting question to ask, because in part of the book, Anne-Marie's thought, I did some research on this exact thing, because it's like, what women are capable, we're smart, we're intelligent, we're strategic, we have everything that we need, we are resourceful, you can get stuff done. I mean, a woman with children and a full-time job, they get a lot of stuff done. So why are these sticking points still there? So I dug deeper, and that's what I found in Anne-Marie's Slaughter's work. She said that part of what we need to do and let go of is that sense, or that feeling of being needed. So it's whether that is very personal. So it's very personal for each person.
Yeah.
So the deeper, the surface thing is, I don't want to have to do all these jobs. Like, why can't Dad do it? Or but the deeper level thing is, but do I actually like this feeling of being needed? Is that serving me in some way? And if it is there something else that I can do that will make me feel that I'll still feel needed?
Yeah.
And I can start working on getting dad or her, the other person, to contribute more and
Yeah.
set up that pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
I don't know, ask your dad, I'd love to help you, and you're so important to me and you're a high priority. But how about you? Can you ask dad? You know, it is doable, but you got to want to do it.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. So obviously the book's launched at an unusual time. The recession's being called the she session because
Yes,
women are
yeah.
more likely to have lost their jobs and they're more impacted by the homeschooling. Is there anything women can do right now to improve their situation?
That's a great question. I think in terms of, because everyone's so different, has such unique context, and you know, even with the different types of industries, as you mentioned, the she session, it's hitting the professions and industries that predominantly have caring at the centre. You know, childcare, you know, aged care, you know, early childhood, you know, nursing, all of those roles where caring's at the centre. So in terms of each individual person, I think the best thing to do, I mean, one of the things to do, which it is hard because, you know, typically we don't have a lot of energy right now, but it's to start this process of questioning. I think that's the first step. So questioning, and you can call it whatever you can, but I talk about questioning the gender code. So questioning all these codes and all these rules and all the ones that are written, the ones that are unwritten, questioning them, understanding and interpreting them, and then asking ourselves, does this make sense anymore? Does it make sense? And if needed, reprioritizing our personal values, because now is the perfect time to do this with so much going on and so much that it has exploded. And asking, does it make sense? And if it doesn't, well, thinking about, okay, what parts of, you know, my own code that I've built over a lifetime, what parts of that do I value and want to keep? What parts of it do I want to delete completely? And what new parts do I want to create? So, you know, there is a process there, but, you know, because there is so much going on right now and everyone has such different, you know, contexts and such different experiences. And I mean, we all found this first round of lockdowns where when the kids were homeschooling, you find out how your kids learn about, yeah, all sorts of things. So I think that the best thing to do right now is looking at our own code and, you know, and looking at rewriting it and creating something else. And that is a building process. And that's what the book's for, which will help with that as the guide. And I would say, you know, as individuals, being aware, having the conversations. I mean, I have so many ideas about what to do on a bigger scale and around advocacy and policy and all of those things. But as individual women, it's that time to reassess, to turn the dial and to reprioritize our personal values.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right, now I'm going to ask a few questions, some of the questions that we ask all our mentors. So I will just pick a few. Is there a particular book that has changed your life?
Yes, it's called The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely changed everything. It's like my Bible, like a spiritual Bible. So I highly recommend it.
What about it was so amazing?
Well, he uses all of the wisdom, I guess, from all the masters throughout, you know, history. So Taoism, you know, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, and he simplifies everything about all of those kind of perceptions, and there's philosophy in there. And he talks about energy, and he talks about who we are and consciousness, and it just really I dig back into it all the time. I have it on Audible as well. Every single page is full of gold, you know, about who we are, who we want to be, what drives us, and our contribution to the world. So it changed everything for me. Totally.
Amazing. Sounds like a must read.
It totally must read. Yeah.
Okay, which of your habits do you credit for most improving your life in recent years?
Absolutely, my morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We were living in China for a year in 2012-13. The kids were really little, 1, 3, and 5. It was a really tough time. That's when our marriage really imploded, and I was seeing a acupuncturist, and he was running this course, eat, breathe, sleep, or something, and it was basically teaching about all the ancient practices, like Taoist practices of having a healthy life. And it started with this morning routine, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that with all the kids being so little. I get up when, I had human alarm clocks. I didn't ever need an alarm clock. But he suggested a practice where you get up in the morning, you have a hot water with a bit of lemon in it or something, go to the toilet if you can, and then do 10 minutes of qi gong, like 8 reps of 8 exercises, 8 moves. And honestly, it changed my life. I took my day back. Like it was a really great grounding for the day. So it was, and it's 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. So 30 minutes in the morning. So getting up an extra 30 minutes before the human alarm clock, bringing in the morning, on your own terms. And then what I felt with that, even though I was under the pump, completely throughout the day, is that I'd given to myself first before I gave to the world.
Yeah.
So throughout the day, I wasn't chasing me time at all, because I felt like I had started the day on my own terms and created some space. And that was 2012, and I'm still doing that now.
Wow.
I get up pretty much the same time, I do the qigong, the drink, and then I've expanded it a bit. I then do exercise or meditation or something, and I've trained the boys to be able to be fairly independent while I'm doing exercise. So, but that, 20 to 30 minutes in the morning is, I credit that with sanity.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. So valuable.
Yeah.
How do you push forward when you're feeling unmotivated or overwhelmed?
That's a good one. So first of all, if I'm overwhelmed, I usually have to release the tension somehow. So I might yell at the kids or something, or just let it out. So there's got to be some sort of release. Okay, so whatever that is for everyone, but for me, it is. I would, certain times of the month as well with my mood, I will release a bit more, but I always apologise and then walk. But there's got to be a cry. That's actually my best one. A big cry, in privacy or wherever you need to. And that's something I tell my boys to do as well. They need to release their emotion and the tension and the build up.
Yeah.
So releasing and knowing that it's not permanent. It's a point in time, this feeling of overwhelm and it might be sadness, grief, disappointment, frustration, but it's something that you're going to move through, and it's okay to feel how you feel and just release it.
I think definitely at this time people feel like it's permanent, but we need to know we'll all get through it.
That's right. Yeah.
What does success mean to you?
That's a great question, and it's interesting because all throughout my life it's been a different thing. So success when I was younger was definitely about getting a house, getting a good job, being financially secure, getting as far as I can in my career, and then I guess then your priorities shift when you have children. So success for me right now, it's a continuum, but for me right now is having a strong relationship with my kids and my partner, being able to share experiences together, and really being able to feel like my contribution matters. So in my relationships and in my work, so that I'm helping other people, that I'm making a difference, and then that I'm trying to create a better world. And honestly, that is what it is. But having the evidence of that is the tricky part. Getting that along is the tricky part. Like that evidence, that you are doing a good job. I think that's what a lot of the times we struggle with.
For our final question today, we'd like to know, if you could speak to everyone in the world, what would you say?
I would say ask more questions, listen more on purpose, and try and understand people as much as possible.
That's great.
So they're the three things. Yeah. Because I think when you do that, it leads to things like empathy. It leads to things like kindness and compassion. But there has to, and because it's great to have those things, but there needs to be a process before that, I think.
That's very good advice. Thank you for talking to me today, Danielle. It's been really insightful.
No worries. Great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it too. I love talking about this stuff. We could go on for ages.
It's so interesting.
If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe via your preferred podcast platform for more episodes of A Moment with Modern Mentors.